And very important not to forget, which is going to be part of the Sustainable Roundtable, is coordinated supply chain integration. I think that in most cases, environmental stewardship and sustainability doesn't start and stop with pork producers. It actually starts with producers, but ends with consumers. So, how we make sure that we're sustainable across the value chain, from the farm to the fork.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Swine Canada podcast. I am Dan Columbus, and I will be your host for today's episode. And with me today, I have Katerina Kolemishevska, who is the Director of Policy Development at the Canadian Pork Councils. Welcome to the show, Katerina.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, just because some of our listeners might not be aware of who you are and what you do, I'll just ask you to introduce yourself, give a little bit of a background before we get into today's topic.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Well, my name is Katerina. I'm the Director of Policy Development at the Canadian Pork Council. I'm mostly dealing with environment sustainability file for the Canadian pork producers. Just a short background on my experience. I actually started my career with Invent Capacity Building, which is international organization dealing with capacity building and knowledge transfer for agricultural producers, especially that are interested in economic diversification in developing countries. I also work with UN FAO. I led a regional project to support family farming knowledge transfer and integration. And in close cooperation with European Union and European Commission, I participated in establishment of regional agency that promotes sustainable agriculture in Southeastern Europe. And now, after international career, international development, and agriculture, I'm back to Canada dealing with more national issues.
Yeah, great. Well, hopefully that all that experience will help you in your new in this role and in the policies and work that you're doing, and which we'll talk about. You mentioned that you want to do or talk about the environmental stewardship and sustainable pork production, which before we started recording, you mentioned that this is a new 5-year program that's just getting off the ground. So we'll definitely introduce it and look forward to updates in the future. So I think we'll start, though, by when we talk about environmental stewardship or sustainable pork, what exactly do we mean when we say that, and how is that defined and adopted by pork producers under the Canadian Pork Council?
Yes, and I think that's an excellent way to start this discussion. Pretty much because there's a lot of misunderstanding or misconception around sustainability and the definition of sustainability. And this is pretty much because how it has been introduced nationally and globally. Even if you take our government, for example, usually when they refer to sustainability, they mostly talk about environmental sustainability. However, sustainability per se has 3 pillars. As we know, it has social, economic, and environmental pillars and factors that are part and that create that sustainability structure. For us at CPC, what we meant when we started the discussion on sustainability in our consultation, we actually have defined sustainable pork production as raising pigs in an environmentally reasonable, economically viable, and socially responsible way. And our focus is to minimize economic impacts, ensure financial stability of our producers, and promoting animal health and care.
Yeah, I think it's important, to make sure that those 3 pillars, and that's something that I know even when we're working with our students and other people, right, we tend to stick to either the environmental or the economic part of it, but the social also provides an important aspect of sustainability as well, and especially talking about that social license. So it's good to hear that they're all being included. So I guess then, what are the key environmental challenges in pork production, and how are you guys addressing those?
So there are many challenges, especially when we talk about environment sustainability, because it's such a broad spectrum, right? You're trying to tackle everything, as I mentioned, social, environmental, economic, and they're all integrated. However, when we talk about environmental sustainability, which builds within that sustainability framework, I think the economic viability is very important, but also very challenging. And the reason being because the past 18 to 20 months have been quite difficult for producers, not only pork producers, but in general agricultural sector. There have been some losses in production, not to mention that we're dealing quite a lot with increase in input costs, inflation. We have the global conflicts, and apart that we were part of the global pandemic that also added additional difficulties within the production and the value chain per se. So I think balancing the cost of implementing sustainable practices while maintaining economic viability for producers is very important. And investing in certain environmental measures on the farm, when we consider all those barriers and challenges that we're currently experiencing, becomes quite a difficult component. If you don't have the capital, if you don't have that investment support, it is difficult to talk about environmental sustainability implementation on the farm. So, what CPC does is that we're trying to support our producers through capacity building, promoting cost effective BMPs, and providing access to financial options, either public options or through different loan programs with financial institutions. Then we have the technological and innovation barriers. Lack of access to technology and innovation systems are quite a big challenge for our producers, especially because we have new technologies that require additional research and to test their efficiency here in Canada. We're mostly referring to different weather conditions, soil type, and local conditions. And I know that we're trying to work and collaborate with our national research institutions, including Swine Innovation Pork, Prairie Swine Center, to find what are the priorities when we talk about technology and innovation and how to properly address them through research. And then you have the regulatory and policy compliance, navigating complex regulations and policies that are being put in place are challenging for our producers. CPC does try to support by providing guidance and tools to comply with these standards. But most importantly, we strive to advocate for producer needs and how to address those needs within the policy design. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of sustainability practices or sustainable on-farm management comes with proper funding and incentive support. So we're trying to also advocate to the government that we have to ensure there's support and incentives to encourage adoption of sustainable practices.
Hmm. So you mentioned looking at different environmental measures. Do you have like what's the list of what measures are you including in this policy framework when you are like specifically trying to address the environmental impact?
So, first of all, we're trying to focus, and this is a very important factor, data management. Very little, or we know that we're all dealing with lack of data, not only in Canada, this is worldwide. And from the past, we have seen that provinces have engaged in collecting their own environmental data and doing assessments. There have been here and there some national assessments done on the environmental impact of the industry. However, when you look all those reports and assessments, everybody's applying different methodology. So it's very difficult to aggregate that information into a very comprehensive report. So what we're trying to do as a CPC, as a national organization, is develop a unified data management system and eventually establish a greenhouse gas inventory system. And this will help us to quantify and monitor emissions and identify reduction potentials and eventually track progress towards sustainability targets once we are setting them in the future. And then eventually, with that, we will be able to see the gaps and the opportunities for change. So, we're developing a list of priority best management practices, as well as technologies and processes that have high potential to economically improve environmental profiles. And, just having a list, it will not be sufficient, because then you will require a tool to implement for those producers who are interested in those BMPs on the farm. So we will be developing guidelines on environmental management systems, also called EMS, to help producers integrate sustainable practices into their overall management processes. EMS is a great tool also for those producers who will be interested. Of course, this is all voluntary, to also have a better reporting system on the farm to see cost savings measures, productivity improvements, but also it will serve as a verification tool if they're interested to gain additional financial resources from different financial institutions.
Great. Are there specific technologies that you are looking at that you think are going to be maybe more beneficial than others, or have the potential for that benefit, or like what do you see coming down the pipeline when it comes to technology?
Well, when it comes to technology, precision farming, it's very important. Digitalization of different farming systems is also very important. But also, we have to be quite realistic that precision agriculture it's quite expensive. So, our goal is when we talk about the list and the priority best management practices of what BMPs will actually be easy to adopt, fast to adopt, but also will bring some value add to our producers. However, we have different producers. Some are early adopters, some are adopting practices, and some are just being introduced. Not to say that they're not aware of best management practices, they're maybe not aware of the terminology per se. However, when we speak to producers, many of them have adopted many practices for the cost efficiency or operational efficiency in the farm, but didn't realize that they actually have a lot of environmental benefits. And just to be just an example, we want to offer a list that goes from simple, very easy to implement BMPs to more complex. However, the list should be, as I mentioned in the beginning, BMPs that are able to also provide additional benefits to the producers. And, on a national level, we have seen a lot of sort of highlight towards biogas systems, biodigesters, which are great. However, they have not been properly tested in Canada. And for poor producers, if we must say that they will not work in all provinces. So we have to be careful what we're proposing as innovative systems or best practices and technology innovations that, if it's not being properly tested and it's not working in Canada, we have first to apply research and then propose that as something as a best practice. Other than that, it's not a best practice.
Yeah. So could you give us an overview maybe of the key initiatives of the CPC that you've implemented and how significantly those have contributed to enhancing that sustainability so far?
So we're currently working, as I mentioned, we're developing a list of priority BMPs. We're also focusing on developing a report for carbon market opportunities. What we want to do is educate our producers on the carbon market and helping them understand how to participate effectively to capitalize their ecological goods and services. We're very much engaged in knowledge transfer and capacity building. So we're trying to establish a resource center, provide peer-to-peer networking mentorship programs to support producers in adopting these practices. Of course, we're also getting engaged with raising awareness and training producers through different comprehensive communication and marketing strategies, promoting public engagement and building that public trust. I think we need to tell a bit more about the Canadian pork story. And eventually, at the end of this project, what we're trying to do is build a sustainability strategy, and which is being led by sustainable principles. And the aim is to create a unified and long-term framework that guides Canadian pork industry towards environmentally responsible, economically viable, and socially reasonable practices.
Sounds good. So obviously you can't do this alone. So maybe ask you to comment on the collaborative efforts that CPC has been undergoing, and maybe some of the organizations that you've been working with to promote this.
Oh, definitely. This is a work that actually requires joint efforts on a national, provincial, and local level. And some of very important steps that we are setting for the future on our sustainability framework is actually establishing a sustainable pork roundtable. And this is a national framework that will foster dialogue and cooperation among stakeholders, including producers, processors, retailers, consumers, different environmental groups, and the goal is actually to share knowledge and promoting innovation. And very important is also to strengthen the pork value chain sustainability initiatives. We're very keen on also driving the public-private partnership. So engaging with different government bodies, organizations, and private investors to support sustainability initiatives and advocate for supportive policies for our producers. When we talk about investment support measures, we're trying to also partner with different institutions to mobilize funding opportunities. So we're having a dialogue with financial institutions on developing pork-specific programs that can scale up investments. And of course, I mentioned research and development. We have established a research advisory committee where we managed to get together experts from different fields from the pork industry that have been working or are currently working on environmental stewardship and sustainable pork production. And eventually, the role is to provide valuable guidance and insights into emerging trends, best practices, innovative solutions. The role of this committee is also to prioritize research initiatives and where we sort of have gaps within the research. We're also trying to work with them to collect most relevant and accurate data for on farm management practices. And in the future, this research advisory body will also serve to identify gaps in skill development resources, and eventually encourage active participation from producers in developing programs to ensure that whatever research results we have, they're practical and meet the real world needs.
And when you talk about the roundtable and having these discussions, I'm wondering, like, what process do you have in place for identifying who is involved in those discussions? And I guess, is there opportunity if people are interested in participating in this for them to do so, and how would they do that?
Of course. So we were planning to do and establish a methodology of how we set up the sustainable pork roundtable, and eventually it will be a combination of different players. We have to set up a protocol of engagement groups. And I think in the past, there was an attempt to have a sustainable pork roundtable, which I think around COVID has died. And mostly it has, it sort of died off because it was tackling issues related to policy only. And I think it became repetitive. So people lost interest. This is not the goal. We want to make sure that we have the private sector engaged, we have the public sector, so we have different thematic approaches towards what is being brought on the table. So again, we can have a device, different groups being part of the discussions. We can have different international bodies being invited and participating, as long as we define the objectives and the priorities of what the Sustainable Pork Roundtable wants to achieve.
Very good. So we mentioned at the beginning, that this is a 5-year kind of project. So looking forward, I guess, what initiatives are the CPC really excited about and could further enhance pork production sustainability?
Yeah, so part of this project is actually to have smart market tool integration. So incorporating smart market tools to improve sustainability metrics and market competitiveness. And all these topics will be sort of a part of discussion of that sustainable pork roundtable. We want to also participate and develop programs like sustainability incentive program to benefit producers financially, and also enhance utilization of innovative and modern technology systems. So emphasizes, as I mentioned, on precision farming technologies, IoTs, sustainable feed management systems, and so forth. We're also introducing digital tool. We're building a funding portal with a partner organization, and the goal is to have access to funding. It's more of a one-stop shop for pork producers to see all available grants and funding programs relevant for them on a federal and provincial level, and how they can further support the uptake of best management practices. We're also providing training and coaching on preparing applications, collecting documents that can make sure that those projects are successful. I also mentioned we're developing an advanced data management system, so enhancing data collection and analysis of sustainability metrics is very important. We're building a sustainability index, and that index will measure and track pork production, environmental, economic, and social performance. This index will provide producers and stakeholders, including consumers, with transparent and standardized metrics to evaluate and promote sustainable practices. And of course, always focusing on innovative BMPs. So within the research advisory committee and our technical committees have continual development of promoting an innovation of BMPs, technologies, and improvement of environmental performance. And very important not to forget, which is going to be part of the Sustainable Roundtable, is coordinated supply chain integration. I think that in most cases, environmental stewardship and sustainability doesn't start and stop with pork producers. It actually starts with producers, but ends with consumers. So, how we make sure that we're sustainable across the value chain, from the farm to the fork.
Yeah, lot of exciting stuff coming through. I'm particularly looking forward to the benchmarking and kind of like that. Here's your what what you can be aiming for and measuring how you can change, because like you said, that doesn't really exist yet. I know in probably in the beef side of it, they're much more further ahead when it comes to that number than we are on the pig side. So
And this is part of our data management system. We're trying to set and develop national-wide KPIs, key performance indicators, which will make us easier in the future to benchmark those KPIs rather than, developing an LCA over and over again and conducting
yeah.
surveys. We're also working on actually testing an artificial intelligence tool to make us better collect data on farms. I know that producers are tired of constantly completing surveys and information and being requested for information. So we're trying to make their life easier by developing a tool by using, as I mentioned, artificial intelligence that will make it easier for them to fill in information, use voice to complete this certain information or questionnaire, as long as it takes time and stress away from them in providing the necessary information for us to benchmark.
Yeah, well, definitely looking forward to having you back on in the next couple of years for updates as those become available. I think our listeners will be interested too. Just to kind of bring all of today's episode together, though, I'll ask, if you have one take-home message that you want the listeners to get from everything we've talked about today, what would that be?
I think that we need to understand that sustainability is important, but sustainability doesn't happen overnight. And sustainability requires a lot of skill building, a lot of investment. We need to understand and make sure that it takes time and it's a step by step approach. And you cannot expect environmental change or climate change impacts to change overnight. It is very important, but also we need to make sure that our producers are businessmen, so they survive out of their businesses. Putting too much pressure towards environment will not do anybody good, considering that we have increasing population growth in the next 25 years and food security becomes an issue. Therefore, yes, we need to take care of our natural resources, but we also need to take care of the food that we produce and that we have sufficient food on the table for everybody in this world.
Yeah, great message.
It's time for our famous three. Customers are always looking for greater efficiency. High-FOS from DSM Firmenich is the result of our commitment to develop a phytase enzyme which could deliver ever greater benefits. High-FOS increases the amount of plant phosphorus available to the animal, and less inorganic phosphorus needs to be added to the diet, resulting in substantial savings on feed costs. High-FOS improves average daily gain and feed efficiency. It also reduces both environmental impact and feed costs, meaning High-FOS has a big impact on the sustainability of animal production. Learn more at dsm.com/HIPHOS, HIPHOS.
Before I let you go, we have our last three questions that every guest gets asked. The first question that we have for you is, what is your favorite swine-related resource?
I have to say it AKIS. This is the European Union Agriculture Knowledge and Innovation System. It's a digital tool that has a lot of information, resources, and database for all producers. And I think it will be a great model to have something like that here in Canada, where we can use that information to deliver to the producers, disseminate to producers, and also database to track certain performances. And I think we're on a good way to develop such tools here in Canada as well.
Yeah, that would definitely be helpful to have on the Canadian side of it. Okay. Our second question then is, what is your favorite book or resource outside of agriculture?
My favorite book, it's called Quiet from Susan Cain. I'm highly introverted, so trying to function in a world, as Susan says, that never stops talking, it's sometimes difficult. So this book has helped me quite a lot to understand the society itself.
So you're the second guest in about a week that has recommended that book, and I'm definitely going to look that one up. So
It's
it must be
perfect.
good if it's come up twice now.
And it's excellent book actually to for extroverts to read it and understand introverts. I actually recommended it to my husband and he was like, "Oh, now I understand."
It's actually a good point, and not even just in this book, but in general, I like reading stuff about the other side of it too, because then it helps you understand how other people are acting and everything, and I think that's always important. So
You always have to know the two sides of the story.
yeah. So maybe this leads into our third question pretty nicely then. When you look back at successful leaders or pork producers or people that you've worked with, yeah, what is a characteristic that you think that they all share that helps them with their success?
I think to be a leader and successful producer, you need to have very good management skills. Skills that you can manage people, you can manage resources is very important. Other than that, you will be failing in your business. And I think pork producers are very good managers. And this is why I think sustainability and sustainable pork production will work because you're trying to optimize resource management.
Yeah, no, very good point. Oh, well, Katerina, it's been great having you on. Like I said before, I'm looking forward to having you back on to get to hear about updates with this program and how it's going with the information. But I'll just end by thanking you once again for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'll be more than happy to continue and talk about the progress of this project in the future.
Yeah, sounds great.